can't see. All right, we're good. All right. Good evening, everyone. It is Thursday, April 18th, 2024. The Town of Madison Board of Finance Budget Public Hearing for fiscal 25 is now in session. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For those of you in the audience and those of you virtually, I'm going to go through some of the highlights of the budget. And then at the end, there will be a public comment session. But first, I think what we'll do is the people in the room will be allowed to speak first, and then virtually, Mike, just so you know, virtually will be after the people in the room. But we're going to limit it to 2 minutes to get the speakers in, both virtually and in the room. So I'll go through the budget process, the Board of Finance goals, the budget overview, and the public comment. My name is John Picard, Vice Chair Gene Fitzgerald, Gene on the wave, Bob Donahue, Matt Gordon, Jude Hessian, John Rasmus, and Katie Stein, all on the Board of Finance, all working very well together to do the best we can for Madison. We also have Stacy Novitz, Kristen, the Finance Director and the team, and are amazing, and I can't thank you enough for all the work that you do. So thank you. Yes, you can give her a round of applause. We're going to go to the overall budget process. One more. All right. As most of you know, or all of you know, this is not a quick process. It's really almost year round, but it starts basically in September. The Town of Madison and the public school staff, they have budget discussions. Then in January, the first selectman, she submits the town's recommended budget, and the Board of Education recommends the budget to the town. In February, the Board of Selectmen deliberate for the budget. The BOE presents a presentation to the town, and then the public hearing with the BOS and the BOE, and they recommend the budget presentations. And then in March, the Board of Finance deliberates on a number of occasions, and here we are in April for the public hearing, and then the May referendum and the mill rate will be set. The May referendum is the 14th, May 14th, and the mill rate will be set on May 15th. So the Board of Finance, we work with between the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Education, the Board of Finance. We all work very well together. We all communicate, but we're all separate. We all are going to do what we feel is best for the town. It's really important to know. Yes, the Board of Selectmen will make some recommendations. Yes, the Board of Ed will go through it, and then the Board of Finance will go through and do what they feel is best for the residents of Madison. And part of our job as the Board of Finance is first to prioritize the community needs in response to the economic conditions. We really want to minimize the impact of revow and the mill rate impact on our taxpayers. And then we do long-range financial planning. A lot of people have heard, and we've gone through it many times. It's the Madison Investment Plan, short for long for MIP, but it's a Madison Investment Plan. And we do budget forecasting. We have made a serious commitment to investment in our capital assets, and we've done part of the Madison Investment Plan is the plan for our debt service, because we know it's going to grow for a while. And we want to continue to sufficiently fund our capital improvement program. And part of the issue is we can't just neglect it and ignore it, because it just makes it worse as time goes on. I've never seen a problem become easier, it only becomes worse. So we want to continue to address that. You'll see that as we go forward in the slides today, but it's important that not just to ignore it and think that we've done a couple of things to stop right there. And of course, we want to continue to support the operational services of Madison. So the Board of Finance recommended a budget. Make sure we're on the same page. The town operations budget is $26,541,945. That's a 3.12% increase. The capital budget, this is what I'm talking about, it's still almost $5.5 million in there. We still need to invest in our infrastructure. And the town debt service went up 18% to almost $2 million. That's an increase of $304,000. The Board of Education operating budget went up to 63645. That's an increase of 3%. But one of the things that happened here, and again, the Board of Ed and the Board of Finance and Board of Selectmen working well together, but they did have a decrease in the debt service. The debt service, which I don't think anybody here feels it should belong there, has finally moved to the town side. So that is now on the town side. So the total education budget went up with the decrease in debt service 3.3% to 63,645,156. So the total town and education budget is 97,619,256. That is a 3.45% increase. So on the town side, what's driving the $1.4 million town budget increase? Some of this is contractual. It's 51% town budget's growth is driven by personnel related costs. So it's contractual obligations that we have to honor and we should honor. So that's 51%. You have the debt service, which we talked about. It's gone up 22%. And then you have continued investment in the town and school capital projects, which I said, all that debt service is now on the town side. But that is a 20% increase. So you can see the pie chart there, how it's broken down between salaries and health benefits, capital, debt service, utilities, a few others, but those are the driving costs on the town side of 1.4 million. I'm sure if I have the Board of Ed slide up here, they tell you almost the exact same thing. Part of it's contractual, then you have your health increases and utilities. I think everyone here knows that a lot of things have increased in price. We have the town of Madison. So the next slide is the annual capital budget summary. And I'm going to go right to the next page to hit some of the highlights. The town of Madison capital expenditures by department. So in fiscal 25, that first column, you have beach and restoration, 565,000. You have education, a little over 5 million. Facilities, a little over 3 million. Public safety, 595. Public works, a little over 3 million. Technology, 205,000 for a total of 12,757,483. So what I said earlier is we're still going to invest on our infrastructure. We're still going to be, as a town and a Board of Ed and Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, we're still going to continue to invest in our infrastructure and do things that we need to keep Madison as a one of the top towns here in Connecticut. So the next slide is the town of Madison, the BOF recommended expenditures. So on the town of Madison budget, you see it's 3,397,400. Percentage increase is 4.24. Board of Education is 63,645. The increase is 1,869,462. And then the combined budget is 97,619,256. For an increase of 325,267 for a percentage increase of 3.45%. So projected revenue, the reason we put this slide in, a few things have changed, and so we wanted to bring that to your attention. The first is intergovernmental revenue. There's been our state revenue, for a while we weren't sure, and I'm going back a few years, but it's been recognized for the last 3 years. It's been verified, so we put that in the budget, so that increased by 481,000. Our interest revenue has gone up significantly. We did the average of the last 3 years. Rates were historically low. We don't think that was accurate. They've gone up significantly. We don't think they're going to stay that way, so that's why we did a 3-year average. We increased the interest revenue by 1.3 million for a total of 1.6. And then there's other revenue, your building permit fees and things of that nature. So your grand total on your revenue side is 4,869,324. It's a 60% increase from the previous year, from fiscal 24. And the change is 1,826,741. So 1,826,000. The budget history. So the total town budget went up 4.24. The total education budget went up 3.03. The combined is 3.45. We did a mill rate change estimated about 26%. The reason it's estimated is there's still some assumptions that need to be done in the grand list. So we are projecting the mill rate to come down about 26.5%. So the relationships of revaluation and the mill rate, basically, as the grand list changes, the mill rate changes in the opposite direction. That's basically, it's not always, not everything's ever revalued the same. The businesses, every house is revalued the same, but that's the goal there. There's a grand list. If it grows, the mill rate changes in the opposite direction. The grand list increased by 38%. The potential decrease of the mill rate is 26.59. That gives you the history of the grand list versus the mill rate. You can see that moving in opposite directions on that first slide. Go to the potential fiscal 25 mill rate. So one of the things I want to point out for everyone here in the audience, everyone listening at home, and anybody else, we do have a tax calculator on the website. Chris, I don't know if you want to show them quick, but so you can figure out the impact close enough to what it would be. So the total town budget as presented is $97,619,256. The potential with the potential of the 22 mill rate down from 29.97. So it's a 7.97 mil decrease, or again, about 26.59%. We do put an example here. If the value of your house has 100,000 assessment and the mill rate's 29.97, it equals 3,000. Of course, you can factor that out. Obviously, if the value of the house is more, it's per 100,000. And again, the tax calculator is on the website. So the value of the 138,000 grand list goes to 3.826 times the 22 mill rate is 3,042. So the potential tax increase in this example is about $45 per 138,256 assessed. So that example, and that's an example because every house is going to be, a lot of them will be different, is a 1.49% decrease. This does factor in the increased revenue and potential $500,000 from our fund balance, keeping the rate lower. So we have the town referendum, which will be May 14th, 2024. The Board of Finance will then meet after that to set the mill rate on May 15th, 2024. So again, I'd like to thank all of you and our Board of Finance and our Board of Selectmen and our Board of Education. I know Dr. Cook is the superintendent of schools. I know the Board of Selectmen are, but Dr. Cook is here and chair of the Board of Ed, so I appreciate them being here. And I'm sure there's a number of other people. What I'd like to do now is open it up for public comment. So we're going to do one at a time. We're going to do, Mike, just so people know it. We're going to do in the room first, name and address for the record, and you have 2 minutes to make your comments. So whoever would like to go first, please stand up or raise your hand, or don't all speak at once. Going twice. For the public would like to comment. Going 3 times. I'll wait for you, Bruce, because you're Board of Selectmen. You get a chance to comment.
What about the question?
You can ask questions. It's not a question and answer session. So you can make a comment. We'll get back to you.
So now?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Name and address.
Eugenia Mays, 87 Randy Drive. What are the rules if the budget does not pass? Do we revert automatically to the last year budget, or Board of Finance comes back to the citizens, or how does that work?
Good question. Very good question. We'll get back to the answer.
It's in the charter.
There we go.
Okay.
I'll let Peggy comment. Go ahead.
The process would be that the boards would meet, the Board of Finance would meet again, and it can make changes. It can only make reductions to the budget. And then the Board of Selectmen could then call another referendum for another public vote. We have time to have that happen before tax bills go out in mid-June. So it would not automatically revert back. I will just speak from experience. I was on the Board of Finance in 2009 when the town had 2 budgets voted down. And so we were sitting in a very warm room at Polson Auditorium in the middle of July for the second public hearing. And there was a second referendum in July. And what the tax collector did was send out a bill with the old mill rate. And then we had to do a whole nother bill in August with the adjusted new mill rate. So that's just some comment I'd like to share with the board.
Thank you, personally.
Can I make a comment too?
I'm gonna let Bruce talk. Now you're good.
The charter actually outlines the process too, so if you want to look at that, it will show you what happens if it doesn't pass.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else from the audience like to comment? Yes, name and address, please.
Yeah, Janet Nicolini, 8 Madison Avenue. Question, I heard there's about 22 million in the undesignated fund, and I think you just said 500,000 would be put against the mill rate. Why so little?
Thank you for the question. We will answer that at a future point, but that's not exactly accurate.
What is
the other
accurate?
money is. Bruce, anybody else in the public would like to speak? Go ahead, Bruce.
So I just like to, I'm already on the record as saying this, I'd just like to reiterate it. The Board of Finance added money to the Board of Selectmen budget, a relatively small amount in the grand scheme of things, $10,000. This is monies that the Board of Selectmen did not request, and at this time does not have a use for. So respectfully, my request is that when you vote on the budget, you vote to remove that $10,000 from this upcoming budget.
Thank you, Bruce. Anybody else from the public who would like to speak in this room? For the second time? Yes.
Dana Schmaltz, 5 Jonathan's Landing. I just have a question about asking questions. It says that we can ask questions on the advertisements on the Madison Democrats page. So what's the point of asking questions if we can't get answers?
So you'll definitely get the answer
When?
for the end of the meeting.
Before the end of the meeting?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought we could do it now. Why can't, right.
I mean, see if there's any other questions, the same question may be asked, may not. So we'll answer the question. I want to be respectful for others. Yes.
Barbara Beckerman, 4 Deer Creek Drive. I have a comment or question regarding new business, item 11. It is a pedestrian bridge sidewalk over Neck River at Green Hill Road that you are allocating funds for a consulting firm. And is inland wetlands taking into consideration environmental impact?
Good. Yeah, so, thank you, and this is public hearing for the budget, our meeting, just so you know, is after this. But I'm pretty sure that's being tabled, but, so, just so you know, that's at our Board of Finance meeting, which will start at the conclusion of this meeting, or possibly 7:30.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on the budget? Comment? Mike, anybody in the virtually?
No, one.
Go ahead.
Hello,
Name and address, please.
Terry Vanendolder, 17 Bartlett Drive. Yes, as one of the other speakers in the audience indicated, the questions that are being presented toward the board right now, are we, the public, going to hear the answers at this meeting? In other words, are you going to be providing those answers just to those individuals or to the whole public population?
Well, it's a good question. So we're going to answer them to the best of our ability tonight. How it's disseminated is going to be, hopefully people are here and maybe we can put them on the website. It'd be the best possible way to disseminate the information. Anybody else? Go ahead, sir.
Jim Schmaltz, Jonathan's Landing. When you were going through the slides, you went through the CIP slides pretty quick. I was wondering if you could kind of revisit and just lighten up a little bit more. Sure.
I'll pull back up.
There you go.
Which was the previous one?
You done with questions? We done with questions? I'm gonna go through. I'm gonna answer those questions. You just go ahead and read. This slide, Jim?
Yeah.
So the capital, I went through fiscal 25, the hearing for fiscal, even though the ones in the future, even though they're there, doesn't mean they're necessarily gonna happen. So for fiscal 25, we had 2.8 million capital non-recurring expenditures, 325,000 in communications, and which is gonna come to another point there on the reserve fund. 75,000 for fire protection, 300,000 for highway equipment, 375,000 for the Madison hose, 30,000 for Madison Hose Company hose and equipment. The other one was for a truck. 760,000 for major roads, 130 for a truck, and then 37,000 for the hose and equipment, 135 for police vehicles, and then 275 for technology. And then the other one was the beach and rec. On the next page, the education, general government, facilities, public works, and technology. So I want to partially answer that question. Say, could you just take us through some of the money that we're spending from the reserve fund? So we do have a healthy fund balance, and I'll need for one, if you spend it, if it goes to reduce the mill rate, you won't have it again. And it may sound like a great idea. What we've done is come up with a way to use the revenue off of that, so it's reoccurring. It's really difficult to me as a member of the Board of Finance. If you take one-time revenue, put it in that operating budget, it's not reoccurring. It makes a big problem the following year because you don't have it. So it's to use the revenue off of that, use it to specifically handle some unexpected expenses. I do know a few years ago when COVID came, it was really nice that we had a fund balance. I know I'm sure people can give you examples during the great recession of 2008 when they had the money there. If it's not there, and some of the work that's done to rebuild bridges and roads during some of those hurricanes, I'll say it here, I'll say it publicly, to wait for the state or federal government to reimburse you, that takes a long time to get it at all. So my stance on that is, yes, we'll use some of it, and we use some of it in the operating budget this year. We're using the revenue off that, but if you use that money for if it's not reoccurring, it makes it a much bigger problem following year. Anybody else would like to ask a question, either in the audience? Sir.
The Board of Ed capital CIP, was that on the slide?
It was, yeah, 5,770,946.
Over the 10-year?
That's fiscal 25, sir.
Yeah, like you have this, the 10-year on some of this, right, or 5-year?
In the
Yes.
book I'm on.
The 5 years up there.
Yeah, so you have, that's for this year, right? So you have fiscal 26, 3 million, fiscal 27, 700, fiscal 28, 824, fiscal 29, 1,000,005. Is that, Jim, I'm sorry, just trying to understand the,
Oh, yeah, it was, wasn't it like 50 million for the next 10-year on CIP for Board of Ed?
I don't have the, I know we have the school now, we have the debt service.
Well, besides that, just in repairs and improvements beyond
The
that.
10-year plan is in the CIP document and it is on our website, so you can see that. I don't have the total
Yeah, I think it was
right now, but
just
there
over
is a
50.
10-year plan included in the CIP
I
document.
also
This
want
is
to
just a 5-year.
Stress, if it's 5 million, 10 million, 50 million, 100 million, I want to be clear, it doesn't mean it's going to happen. Really, your commitment is for fiscal 25, and as you go forward, it's there. You want to plan for it. That's why we have the Madison investment plan. We're trying to factor in debt service, because what we don't want is spikes in the mill rate. I'm sure, so that's part of it. And it gets changed and moved a lot, which anybody here would tell you. I'm sure anybody from board that would tell you also. Yes, sir.
Roger Marlowe.
No, go ahead, sir. Name and address.
Roger Marlowe, 21 Beaver Pond. We've seen all these expenditures and everything keeps going up. When are you guys gonna start cutting the expenses? Because we're now dealing with affordable housing, we're trying to cram through on us. And yet you say Madison's too expensive to live in, but you're not cutting anything. Show me some cuts.
Thank you for your input there. I know a lot of things have gone up in price, and there is things being cut out of this budget
What?
on the
Come
capital
on,
side.
show us.
I mean, I can.
That's all right. We've cut money from the Board of Education, we cut money for others, they weren't happy about it, so yes, they're there from the
How
original
much?
budget.
Never get numbers.
What's that?
He said you never give numbers. How much?
The Board of Ed was 240,000,
That's all?
that's what was cut.
It's a big deal.
$400,000 reduced from the staff requested budget. That included 167,000 of savings due to staffing adjustment. We eliminated vacant positions in town. We took $97,000 out of line item savings. We took $140,000 through other accounts. So there was actually a net reduction from the staff requested budget. this year. We actually went through a full exercise, and went through every line on the account in the town budget and made reductions, and then also requested staff to cut 1% across the board.
About more than 1%.
But you have to understand, there's also labor contracts, utilities, other contracts that we have, healthcare. In this, you don't have my presentation, if you go back to that, that'll show you healthcare was a significant number, so, and we even made reductions to the healthcare plan, so, there was a lot of reductions made, but there's some costs we can't control or change, and we have to absorb them into the budget.
How much
There was
do
a
the
lot
town
of
employees
reductions
pay
made.
contribution to
Thank you
their
for your
health?
comment.
Listen, I don't want to turn this into a back and forth. You can address, and I'm being, Jim.
Another question on the CIP. Once we vote in and approve a CIP, all the items in there are approved, so the town
Just current year.
citizens can't pull it out
Just current year.
in the
No, it's-
future, correct?
Jim, no, it's just, that's why I stress fiscal, one at a time. That's why I stress fiscal 25. It's only for that budget year. That's why I said, they can be changed going forward. When you mentioned a 10-year plan or 5-year plan, it's a planning tool, but it doesn't mean it's going to happen. When you vote on it, it's for that year, for fiscal 25.
So if things can be pulled from it if they're not approved the next year,
They often are.
Yes, they offer it.
by us or by you?
Well, you don't have to approve the following budget. They'll be up again the next year. Sir?
Dennis Crowe, 141 Twilight Drive. The slide you just had up there, with the total capital expenditures. That, oh. No. That one. Oh, that one. Okay, I know I hear you when you say you don't want to take all your unallocated funds and just spend them all in one year because it then makes a false impression that next year they're going to jump. What I see on here is every year it goes down, well, almost every year. I mean, it jumps back up a little bit at the end, but I don't see an expectation that because our capital expenditures are going down, is this just capital expenditures that will be covered by debt? And so this really isn't budget effect directly, or is it because of the debt?
Debt affects your budget. It's not, if
Yeah.
you borrow money, you have to pay it back. You pay it back.
But you pay it over time.
Correct. You pay it
So
over
those
time.
numbers don't reflect what's happening in that year's budget. They reflect what will be added to debt and then spread out.
So I'll answer your question. If some of it's borrowed for, that's absolutely true. If you're using some for the general fund, that's not. If you get grant money, it's not. So yes, some of it could be spread out over 20 years, but if it's a capital side and you're bonding for it, it won't be affected this year, but it'll affect it going forward.
So if I
Good.
can, if you don't mind, if you go to the slide before, Dennis?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
If you go to the
Slide before.
this slide before, this is what is reflected in the budget. This is what we vote for. And I apologize, the total on the bottom is not showing, but this is what you go to referendum and it's included in your budget that you vote for. The next slide is what is coming out of our reserves. So we put money into our reserves every year. For 5 years, we could put in money to buy a fire truck in year 5 and pay cash.
This right here is.
These are capital expenditures out of various items, as John said, bonded grants, and capital project reserves. So we build up reserve balances in order to pay for these capital expenditures. So this is not what you're seeing when you go out to the referendum, the other pages, but this is what that page is what we plan on paying out of our reserves, bonding, grants, or donations.
So if there's a fire truck that's 200,000, they put 40,000 a year in and buy
So
the
we
capital.
save into our reserves so that we can purchase and make these construction projects or purchases out of the capital.
Some of it, not in this side, it's also by grant.
Andy Palambroso, Horse Pond Road. We have a reassessment this year, right?
Correct.
And taxes are gonna go up quite a bit on our house especially. Why are the towns spending so much money on schools and the academy school project? At the same time, they'll get reevaluated. Why couldn't you wait a year or two and spread things out a little bit so it wasn't so much money Another problem I'm having, I'm watching all these houses being built. I was on Creamery the other day. It had to be about several $5 million houses being built. Is the town wanting to bring in rich people from New York into this town and basically to hell with all the people that built this town? That not gonna be able to afford to stay here anymore?
Just listen. Go ahead.
I mean, I think, first of all, the school the bonding projects are people that the residents, the voters of the town of Madison approved and wanted. It's an investment in our future. So that's why we have those projects. Those were in the works for over 10 years. So it has really nothing to do with the current timing. We do have a plan to smooth this out. Our goal is to have the mill rate mitigation plan, which is the Madison investment plan, so that we don't have spikes. That's why we have all these different line items with savings for future capital expenditures, rather than paying in 1 year for like $500,000 project. We start saving over a period of 5 years, and we squirrel away every year. So the line items in the budget for capital are those little savings accounts. So that's how we manage the mill rate better, to keep it down. We're also smoothing in the debt service. Every year, we're issuing more debt to pay for the projects as they go to completion. But at the same time, we're going to be lowering what we put into the capital account, so that we still have a smooth line of what we're investing. Because there's different ways we finance our capital projects. We do through cash, which is historically what we do for most of our capital projects. And then we do bonding for some of them, for the larger ones. The third thing that we've been relying on, which this doesn't really show, is all the outside money that we receive through grants to help pay for the projects. So you might see a $5 million project, but some of that might be actually partially offset by grants that we've received. So the project might cost $5 million, but we might get a large grant, so that Madison taxpayers actually not paying as much.
Well, the
And
grants
I would
come
like
from
to
strings,
comment
don't
a
they?
little bit on the fund balance.
Okay.
Because one of the other issues with the fund balance is we're using that to match some of these grants. So that we're doubling our money basically by putting $1 of Madison taxpayer money in, and then we're getting $1 of Madison, or $1 of state or federal funding to match it. So the fund balance allows us to do that by matching those grants. And I would like to also comment that you might have a $20 million fund balance, but we're required to have about $9 million of that as a reserve fund. And the board is aspiring to have even more than that, more conservative, and have it be more like $12 million. So the amount of money you have there is actually much smaller, and you match that up to some of these capital projects. The reason we have all these capital projects is for years, the town didn't plan for its capital very well, so it was very lumpy. And so we're trying to do 10-year, 15-year lookouts and make sure that we don't have any surprises again. And we don't have to do the Madison School Renewal Plan again, where we have to go in with a $90 million wholesale revitalization of our schools. This way we can plan things and do it in a smooth way. So that's the big picture, and we do a lot of planning for that, financial planning. And so, that's the intention.
Yeah, listen, as you said, the referendum was voted on. Our job as a Board of Finance to figure out the best way to pay for it and the best way to smooth that out over the next 10 to 20 years. I want to answer this other question. You said something, I'm just going to kind of repeat what you said. You don't want people from New York building these $5 million houses. I can tell you unequivocally that's not the case, but if someone owns property and they go through the proper planning and zoning and in wetlands and they want to build a house, that's their right. We may not agree with it, but that's how it works.
My issue was that the seniors that live in this town is not gonna be able to stay here much longer.
I don't want to speak for the
And
first
that's-
select, but I'm sure
well, that's
there's
the
lots of
truth. I mean,
seniors leave, we want everybody to stay.
No, it's not the case. How much was spent so far on the Academy School project in just the design phase so far? Do we have that number?
We do, it's about,
1.3 was actually
Yeah.
spent,
yeah.
but we committed to more than that.
How much?
1.3 was spent to
Already?
No, I thought committed.
1.3 has been spent.
Yeah,
spent,
okay.
and then we have commitments,
Yeah.
contracts for more than that.
And this is on design phase? I'm in the wrong business.
Architectural,
This is just to design
I'm in the wrong business.
planning, design, architectural.
Wow.
Sir,
Yeah, just Roger Marlowe again, 21 Beaver Pond. Does the town have any COVID funds left over?
You're talking about ARPA money or,
The money the federal government gave us for COVID?
roughly?
Um,
It's something.
We have, if you're talking about American Rescue Plan funds, because there's lots of different types of COVID funds. We didn't really get any other COVID funds except for what we'd submitted for like PP&E a few years ago. The town did get $5.3 million awarded to us as part of the American Rescue Plan. And we're figuring out how much is left right now, but it might be $300,000, $300,000 or $400,000. We had some projects they were committed to that we realized there's deadlines and you have to spend this money. And so some of those deadlines we may not meet, so we're gonna redeploy them to some other projects.
Yeah.
How's that 1.3 broken up to? Who got what, when, and where?
Are you talking about academy? You're not gonna get the details. So give me guys, email something, I'll get it to you.
Okay, and what's gonna be the cost, the budget to run the academy? That's gonna be at the taxpayer's expense.
Depends on the project, right?
Yeah, it's not in this budget, and there was a projection that was in the public presentation made in January of 2022 that highlighted an estimated operating budget for Academy.
Yeah.
I just don't have those numbers.
And I don't wanna back up.
You get it to me?
Yes, absolutely. You give me your email address, and I'll do it.
But I would prefer that being public.
Mike, we publicize it afterwards. Yeah.
I think
so I
it
wanna
It
give to
also
the
is
record.
public.
I think it's
on the
posted.
website.
Public, it's on the
website.
site. But I wanna give it to him, you know, he asked for it.
Yes, it was part of the public presentation, so.
0.54.
Yeah, this is related to this year's budget though, so that's what this meeting is noticed for.
And just one more point about, and Peggy mentioned, she was the first select woman mentioned about the general fund, how we use it for matching grants and other things, but it's also how we use the 1.3 million is the interest off of that, which is reoccurring revenue, which is what I talked about earlier. So that helps offset the budget expenditures also.
And also we've also appropriated out of fund balance. Last year, we did 3.5 million into the capital plan, so.
And we
it's
put money
going
into the
back.
fire pension and we've done.
And the pension plans.
Pension plans and all
Yeah.
that.
So,
Any other comments from the public?
Hi, good evening, Sheila Valambroso, 522 Horse Pond. Just a comment and truly an observation. Back in January or February, we all received a revaluation of our properties. And at that time, of course, mine came in at some point in February, and I had up to maybe 10 days to get a hold of this Visual Solutions, I think was the name of it. And it was very limited time frame, and it was a nightmare to get in touch with them, okay? And when you did get in touch with them, they were not all that helpful, and they were very rebuttal, okay? So needless to say, a lot of people got very discouraged in trying to contact them because number one, of their response, and number two, of the timeline that we had involved in being able to do this. So people turned around and said, because I spoke with a lot of them, that they turned around and said, well, let's not worry about it because the budget's coming out in April. And if you want to appeal it, you have to appeal it between January and February. If you miss that deadline, you're not going to have an opportunity really to appeal it because the budget's coming out in April and you've already missed the deadline, correct so far? Right?
Yep.
So here we are in April now, and people all received a revaluation of their properties. And in some people's cases, 50 and 60% higher. Now, I understand costs have gone up, building costs have gone up and all of the above. I understand that, okay? But now that we see what the mill rate is, and I see the example that you gave me, and that price up there at 100,000 is wonderful. And I would jump at the opportunity at $100,000 to calculate that out. But mine's not going to be that in the long run. And monthly expense for me now is going to be much higher than what that was there. So my question to you is this then. Why couldn't that revaluation come out after April? So now people actually see what in fact they're going to be paying. Because it's not going to be a wash, it's going to be an increase to many people, okay? It's not going to be from 28 or 29 to like maybe 20 people were thinking. And they would think, well, maybe $100 a month is not bad. But for some people, it's going to be beyond that. And I'm one of them, okay? So I'm just asking why we couldn't have had this revaluation come out after the budget. I understand your budget meeting is in April, and I understand the concept behind it. But now people are basically, unfortunately, at a disadvantage because now there's nothing they can do about it because they missed the appeal process. So now they're kind of stuck with this. So that was my question. Why couldn't the revaluation have come out after the budget that was identified here today?
So that's a, listen, I like the comments, a great question. I don't know if anybody remembers, it used to be the state mandate, you had to do a reval every 10 years, and then they changed it a number of years ago to every 5 years. So it's a state mandate, when we do it, you have to do it. It used to be, I don't know if you can hear me, I'll say it a little bit louder. Years ago, it used to be a mandate, every 10 years you get a reval. Now it's every 5 years, and they tell you when you have to do it, and it's vision appraisal, I believe, is what the company that was used. And there's not a lot of companies that do the appraisal I know of, so it's a state mandate, we don't have to agree with it, but we have to do it.
But it's unfortunate because now people are locked into what the outcome is.
I'm not arguing that point.
Yeah, it's
The
just
timeline, the timeline is also part of the mandate, so we don't really have
That's okay.
flexibility, we have to follow the state mandated process. And the firm that we hire is a public bidding process that we went through when we selected. Vision has been used in the past, but it's good to have those comments back, because 5 years from now, we're gonna have to do it again, and
Yeah,
it's good
because
to
they're
know
not
that the
very-
public did not have a reasonable experience. with
they were
them.
poor to do business with. I would go out there and seek out another vendor.
One time I called, they said
Thank
their
you.
computers were down.
Yes,
Good help.
actually, when all of the meetings, the preliminary consultation before the appeal, so they scheduled it for the week. And unfortunately, the computer system were down this week, so you come in for that appointment with your paperwork. But they just say, my system is down, I cannot comment, I see we disqualified here or there, like, so what's,
It's
I
unfortunate.
got that.
Instead of-
Also, our computers are down. I got the same thing.
yes,
So
that
I
that
asked,
was.
what comps did you use? And it couldn't tell me what comps they used. So I had to waste the assessor's time and come for the formal one because they didn't have the information that
No,
I.
it's-
Right,
it's
so
all about, you know, that's
I'll speak with the board, and the board, we don't hear everything, so we are glad you bring it, point your point. Actually, it was a great point, you know, put it out there. But again, that's, as the first selectman said, that's dictated by the state, that you have to do it every 5 years and the time frame.
Can we change our budget dates or that's not feasible?
That's-
It's
that's
in
in the
our
charter.
It's in our charter.
Change
There's
the
a very
charter.
regulated thing.
You're the boss, change the charter.
Oh, you're the-
Somebody has to change it. Maybe we can vote on it, this doesn't happen again.
No, but that's a public process, it's
They need to do
that's
something.
state statute about doing a charter review process, it takes 2 years to change the charter for anything. But I will also say, understand that this all has to be done before the July 1st, which is the beginning of the fiscal year for the town. So you really have these kind of things colliding all at once, where we have the budget process and then we have the reval process. So it's kind of just, it kind of is a crunch, that unfortunately don't happens.
So,
She had her hand up first, so I'm gonna let her.
Yeah, Karen Rankin, 21 Little Hollow. I am curious to hear how many appeals were actually overturned.
That's a
I
tough
can't-
assessment, I do not know, it's a
I
good
can't
question.
tell you how many were overturned, but we had 300 appeals
Oh, I believe it. My
in
mom,
the month of March, so
okay,
I'm-
my mother's taxes went up 100%. 104%. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
50 was that.
well, they can appeal next year as well.
Okay,
So
and I
this-
was on this blog.
Listen, we'll do this one at a time, please, one at a time.
I would like to know how many were overturned,
Thank you.
please. Thank you.
That stated that we'll probably get a report from the assessor once this has all been completed, because they just have been wrapping this up. And so we'll get a report from the board of selectmen, and we can.
We'll publicize that also. This young lady, her hand up, I'm gonna come to you.
I have 2 comments. One,
Just name and address again, I'm sorry.
Dana Schmaltz, Jonathan's Landing. One comment I have to make, again, and I said this at a previous meeting. You guys talk about grants and these gifts that we get from the state. You do realize that is our tax money. That is tax money.
But it's coming back to us.
Wait, listen, we're not gonna go ahead.
But you act like it's a gift. It's not a gift. We've already paid into that, correct?
You're talking about
Okay,
state
so
and
that's
federal
number
grants?
one.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm gonna tell you my philosophy on that, because I'd rather have us receive them. If we don't receive them, it's gonna go to some other town, some other place, and they're gonna use them. And to me, we're gonna use it much better, it's gonna be much better for you. So yes, you're right, but if that state and grant money that you paid for is gonna go someplace else, I'd rather see it come to Mass. You had 2 questions. Lisa.
The second question or the second comment I'd like to make is when you set out to find a company to do the revals, you bid that out, you said? Was that bid out to different companies?
The state contract. State bid.
I'm
So
sorry.
we did a formal RFP.
We did a formal bid,
RFP,
yep.
and I think we only had 3 submissions.
And who was the one that you went with? Like, where did he fall, or where did they
Well,
fall?
this is off topic.
Financially.
public
No, it's not
hearing,
off topic.
so,
I'm asking, I'm making a statement.
We can
And
get
I'd like an
information for
answer.
that, but that was done 2 years ago.
It was a
2 years ago.
formal process
I don't
for
think it's funny.
interviews.
I mean, what's
I'm not
funny about
laughing
it?
at anything. I didn't mind it.
Can I just make one statement? I understand all your anger and frustration, and I agree with you. Yeah, I do, because I live here. So yes, I do. So my point is this, there are certain things that are under the Board of Finance's control, and there are certain things that are under the Board of Selectmen's control. So I agree with you, and I think we do need to look at the company that we had to do the assessment, but that's not us. So I think the time would be better served going to a selectman meeting and discussing that and asking that to put on the agenda. That's out of our control. So what I just want to focus on is the budget process and what we're putting forth. I agree with you. My taxes went up, my assessment went up, my mother's went up. It was awful. But that's mandated by the state. So there are things we can't control. So I just want to make it clear, the Board of Finance does not hire the assessment piece of it. We don't dictate it. We don't get the reports on it. We have nothing to do with that piece of it. So I appreciate the frustration and the anger, but I just want to make sure that we spend time in this meeting talking about the budget to make sure that we are answering those questions for people. And the people who can answer you about the assessments, which I believe should be answered, need to go directly to the Board of Selectmen. So we're
So I
not
have a statement about that
entwined.
too.
I'm gonna,
Okay, because we asked, I have a statement,
I'm gonna let you come back and talk, see your hand, if you don't mind.
I just want to finish my thought.
Oh.
Okay, so my thought is,
Go ahead, David,
is the
finish your
last,
thought.
thank you, I'm going to.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Picard.
You're welcome.
So what I was going to say was, the last meeting that we were at the Board of Selectmen, we were told that we can't ask questions and we can't get answers. Where my husband said, why don't we have a special meeting then, where we could be a Q&A? And that got poo-pooed out too. So that's statement number one. And statement number two, I don't even remember, it's just, if you can't sense the anger and the frustration in this room just by everybody and the way they're twitching and talking, and you're all sitting up there shaking your heads and laughing, it's not funny. Smiling and ribbing each other, it's not funny. People are in dire straits here. People can't afford what it is that you're all proposing. It's ludicrous. I said it once and I'll say it again and I'll keep saying it because it's true. It's ludicrous. And sitting up there and nodding your heads and all patting each other on the back like you did a good job with this, you didn't. You didn't do your due diligence. And that's all I'm gonna say. So, Mr. Picard, carry on.
Thank you, Dan.
John, can I make a comment real quick?
I'm gonna let this young lady.
This related to what they were just talking about.
Well,
Okay?
I thank you for
Go ahead.
my attention. And I do appreciate that we need to stay on topic. It's just that the goal of a reevaluation is about equity. And there really wasn't. If you look at what the assessor's office FAQs indicated of the process, not about vision solution, government solution, because they're only the vendor. It's about the process of equity. It's where you live and how subjective the appraisal process really is. And that doesn't always equate equity among homes, comparable market values for homes. When how many people, 100% of our residents on Deer Creek Drive was denied. 100% of who applied were denied. There's something wrong with the process. So I ask you to please look at the process during the next 5 years and create a more equitable procedure for all our homes. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott, did you want to say something?
No, moment passed, thanks. One quick question. Andy Bellenbrook, so first one. I'm going back to the academy school, this kind of a pet peeve for me. You got grants for that project, right?
Yes.
And I know the answer, but I want to ask the answer I get from you. What were the fixed liabilities by taking that grant to the taxpayer?
So we have,
That's the budget. It's a budget thing.
I'm not saying that, but the grants in the academies, there was a referendum and then the board of selectmen put that together. So we have the opportunity for us to match it, if it's a matching grant, how do we match it, or to accept the grant? So I'm just trying to follow the question in terms of,
Okay, well,
our board of finances to accept the grant or to.
I hope I read this right, but there has to be a couple positions that you have to put into the academy school over there. One was $114,000 for a social worker. And then a couple crisis management people. That's gonna add to our budget.
So the question is, were there positions that were in the budget for the benefit of the grant?
Right. Because if you don't have enough money to complete that job, you're gonna start it. The town's gonna start it and not complete it. But isn't it under the grant that you have to put that person in that
No.
position in that place?
No.
Am I
A
wrong?
lot more than a grant.
It's not, no, and this is not a meeting to discuss academy. There is no position in this budget currently that has to do with academy. The only thing that's in this budget that has to do with academy is the interest expense, because we issued bonds and notes last December, and some of them, or about $6 million of those, are allocated to academy. So the interest expense on that is in there, and that is it. So the positions that were discussed that were presented to the public back in January 2022 were related to when the building opens, what would the staffing requirements be for programming and for taking care of the building? And that is not in this budget. The building hasn't opened.
This young lady had a question first, I'm sorry.
Well,
Split that
no,
money already.
just a comment, so I understand the revaluation process. I was a real estate agent, so I know what goes into that, and then you do look at the comps and you do look at the, what things are selling in the area. In my neighborhood in particular, and I think a lot of homes south of Post Road, our assessment actually went up. My assessment personally went up 76%. So when I, and you may say, okay, your house is worth a lot more, yay, you could sell your house. Well, I don't want to sell my house. Or, I bought my house for, much less in 2008. I don't want to leave Madison. I don't want to sell my house. So the fact that it went up so much in value really, to me, it is not worth it. I would rather it not have gone up in value so I can afford to stay here. So the issue is when you see these increases in the budget, and then you're on that bad end of having, a 76% increase, this hurts. I mean, any increase hurts. So when we look at things, that maybe are nice to haves, but not necessary, not absolutely necessary needs for the town, we get upset with you guys because we feel like you should be more sensitive to those of us who have this issue now with this reassessment being so high, and just, we're not rich people, but yet, our homes now are worth close to $1 million. Well, great, whatever. But essentially, it's forcing a lot of people to say, we've got to sell and get out of here.
Yep.
And sell to New York people for their second homes.
Okay.
Part of that is the process too, we understand that, and I opened with that reevaluation, everything's evaluated the same, it's just not, and it's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. You understand, I know, Jim had his hand up first, so go to him. Go ahead.
Yes. Trying to understand how the grants work.
Just the name and address again. Sorry.
Jim Schmaltz, Jonathan's Landing. Was trying to figure out how the grants work with the budget. So like we got a grant for Garvin Point. It was $700,000. Part of that required us to open it up to the public and only charge like double what we do. So it significantly reduced a day pass for non-residents. So we pay $40, they should be paying $80 for an annual pass. How does that number, conflict with the money that came in? Is there like, it's not really 700,000. I think a better example is a grant that we're looking at for Academy is $3.6 million. Requires us to create a second responder position to work with the PD, which I never heard we had to do that. It's in the papers. It was $114,000 to create a second responder, social worker as part of Madison Youth and Family.
Let him finish his question. You can clarify.
So like as the grant requires Madison Youth and Family to be in the building, to create a new position to work with the police department as a second responder. So the cost of that over the cost of the bond is going to be, outweigh what the grant money up front was.
Right.
Okay, so the position for Youth and Family Services, the grant, that has nothing to do with Academy. That is actually a police department position that we did a pilot program 2 years ago. It was very successful and it was actually gonna go into the budget. The boards recognize this is a big topic from the state level about what the requirements are gonna be to have a social services person. And so we said, let's hold off, but we'll apply for a grant so we could do a further pilot program. So that is separate, and that grant was to hire this person in. And we're not committed to keep the person on after that. We're seeing this as a pilot program again, that is totally independent of Academy and Youth and Family Services. What was submitted for the grant for Academy was that the plan that the town voted on, that included Youth and Family Services in the building. And it included the beach and rec in the building, and it included all those things. So it's part of the package when we applied to the federal government for the grant.
So the
So that's the
3.6
role.
million had no requirements to
So,
it?
no, we have not received the grant agreement back. So when the grant agreement comes back, we will look at the grant agreement and find out if there's gonna be something else, and the boards will then make a decision, do we wanna commit to this or not? But in terms of,
First responder.
yeah, the first responder has nothing.
So that's a separate
It's
grant?
a totally separate grant, and we haven't received the documentation on that yet. And this board asked us to go out and find a grant to cover the position rather than putting it in the budget. So it was purposely done that way, and we were lucky that we received it because we wanted to continue the pilot program.
And you are right, there are strings attached sometimes, and sometimes we don't do the grants for those reasons. That they mandate things for us that we have to do. Sometimes when we look at the 5-year fiscal planning, we say it's gonna, in the long run, it will
You're gonna own
benefit us.
that.
We
It's
can
not
own
worth
it and it's okay, we plan for it, but you are correct. Some of them are not worth doing because it does put more burden on the taxpayers. And that's something each individual grant is looked at.
And I will also comment on the revenue that we received from non-resident is de minimis. It is vastly better for us to have received the $750,000 grant. And it's only during the construction period that those requirements were, and I can tell you, we've capped it, the number that we sell, and we have data to show that there's hardly any impact, there's no impact at all on our operations to
Is
that requirement. So we
Putting a
can
cap and
provide that.
a
So-
restriction on it of liability, because it's not in the grant paperwork. And it doesn't have an expiration
I
on
mean,
it.
if you like, we can have an offline conversation about the grant, because that's a very different topic. It's not related to the budget, so.
Okay, and then you said that, the grants can be matching or, so the grant, like in Academy, comes off of the budget. It doesn't match to it, correct?
It comes off the bonding.
Right.
Off the
Right,
bonding.
right.
So
We
you're
netted
gonna bond
against
7,
the
and you got a
bond.
$3.5 million grant, now you bond 3.
That was required when it was voted on by the public. The bonding resolution requires that the grants, any grants received be reduce the bonding.
Thank you. And thank you for clarifying
That is-
the other.
No, she answered mine.
Sure. Okay.
Do you want to see if anybody
Yeah,
online has a
come on,
hand
yeah.
raised? I'm just wondering, is there
Got it.
anybody online that has a hand raised?
Yeah, I've got a couple.
Yeah,
Wait,
so,
you got one with that?
You got one
I
there.
see it.
yeah, no, I'm just saying we're trying to balance because it's the room. And
Yeah, I know. That is-
Elizabeth Wilson, Dairyville Road. I heard somebody talk about the ARPA funds, and I wanted to just invite, I'm not sure if it's what board would be in charge. The town of Clinton is using their ARPA funds to help their residents cover co-pays for mental health care. And I don't know if the funds are still available here in this town, but that could be very useful. I just wanted to
Yeah.
throw that out there. It's really helpful.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
And second, I was trying to figure out, where I could see the numbers of people that Madison Youth and Family Services service, each year. I'm just kind of curious about that. I'm not asking for any HIPAA information, obviously, but just numbers.
We have those numbers, it's just not available tonight.
We should get them out and put them on the website so everybody knows.
When do you think those might go up by?
I have to go back to, Scott has done a lot of presentations and as much requests.
I'm sorry, people are talking.
It's hard to hear up here too. Excuse me, folks.
Can you guys
up
stop
there?
talking? Sorry.
It's hard to hear over there with your side conversations.
So the director has presented those numbers a number of times, so we just have to track them down, and we can make them available.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Mike, anybody online?
Yeah, I have two.
Go. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Joan Walker, 39 Stepping Stone Lane. I just have a request that on both the website and if possible, the town web's app for the phone, if there could be a button that you could push and all the documents for the budgets, both the town and Board of Ed, be there so that people could look and do deep dives. And if they have further questions, they could submit them in.
Thank you, Joan, for your input. Anybody else, Mike?
Yep.
Yes, hello, Terry again on Bartlett Drive. I have a number of questions which I will just read off and then you can choose to address them when and how, but I would hope that the answers would be available to the public and that how they will be available will be announced by the end of the meeting. First of all, I know that the first select woman mentioned that there were certain positions that were not filled in the town, but with regards to the increase in the town budget, how many new employees are part of that town budget increase? I know that there was an assistant that was hired for this first select woman, and there was a request by the police department or certain individuals to hire 2 more police officers. Was that approved? What percentage of overtime is requested in the police department budget? And is this an automatic approval year after year? Who has oversight of that overtime request? As we all know, most of that overtime goes in toward padding the retirements. Initially, there was a comment by the chair that this was not going to be a back and forth discussion. However, how are the taxpayers supposed to understand what is actually going on? And mind you, I do understand, and all of us do, you do not have an easy job. We recognize that. But this is what people are, able to live here or they're not able to live here based on the budgets. And they're going to place their votes based on that information. Then I have a question. Are there any members of any of the boards who are putting forth budgets that have a minimal impact financially with regards to these increases? Now, you don't have to answer that, but you have to think about it consciously. If you are asking people who don't have the financial means that you yourself personally or your family has in order to live day to day, are you actually out of touch with reality with the majority of the people in this town? Couple other items and then I will stop. I applaud again those who had the courage to speak out. Yes, grants always carry contingencies and those are important to decide whether to accept those contingencies or not, to accept those grants or not. It seems to me that we are rushing through the meeting, and this meeting is critical. It's vital. It's important for all of us to understand so that we can make an educated vote come May 14th. And I do hope that many people get out and express their opinion by their vote, whatever that may be. With regards to the ARPA funds, Why on earth would we need to spend $50,000 to tell Madison people that they're passing the Madison boundary line when we have holes in some of our roads that are, let's face it, they're impacting the ability of us to be able to drive safely? And why do we have to set the mill rate after the vote? Again, I want to leave you with one comment. And this is a quote by William Wilberforce. Having heard all you have heard tonight, you may choose to look the other way, but you can never again say that you did not know. Thank you.
Yes.
Oh, hi. That's correct. My friend didn't want to go on Zoom, but she wanted me to ask this question. You said around 6 million has been bonded for the Academy project. What are the debt services cost tied to this in this budget?
2% on the 6.
I'd have to get
20.
the details.
Yeah,
Have to
I mean,
look, but my
let's
guess would be
see,
around one.
whatever I think it was like 3%.
Is it 3 then 20?
Yeah.
3.15.
So 3% of 6 million is 180,000. That's off the top of my.
I guess she heard you. All right.
And just to follow up on that, if the Academy
Please
School
name
doesn't,
address, name
oh,
address
sorry,
again.
Janet Nickney, 8 Madison Avenue. If the Academy School cannot be completed for the cost that we voted for, does that mean, what happens to that $6 million bond? Can that be paid back? Can it be used for other things? What happens to that money?
It's a
We
one-year
own
bond,
it for
right?
the
So
project.
it's paid back in December.
It's a,
No,
it's
the Academy project is continuing. The Academy is gonna have significant renovations done to it, and the money's gonna be applied to the Academy project. The Board of Selectmen discussed it at the last meeting, and the building committee is moving forward on the renovations.
Regardless of cost.
No, right now they're going forward with $2.9 million, which is the budget. We will discuss if we're gonna ask for approval for additional funds above that, but right now, they're working up a plan, they've worked up a plan to stay within the $15.9 million budget.
They can't finish it for that.
So they can do a vast majority of it.
No,
They can't.
So it's another, we've had the Academy meeting, we're
The
back.
question about the interest,
It's part of the budget.
well,
But
the
we've
interest is
had this
definitely part of it.
conversation already.
And
We
you don't
had a
answer
meeting on
questions.
Academy, and there's gonna be more, meetings on Academy.
We're waiting for Andy first.
Chuck, you.
Okay, thank you. Sherry Marlowe, 21 Beaver Pond Road. I understand, budgets for, the necessities, the police, the schools, and the fire department, which to me are essential. But what I don't understand is why we purchased a police car, an electric Mustang police car for our town.
Retrofitted with lights.
Do you know, can anybody,
So
why?
we have a police car replacement schedule. And there are gonna be requirements by the state in the long run to convert to electric vehicles. So this was an opportunity to do a pilot program with the electric vehicle. It's an administrative car. When you talk about the price tag, that's because there's also loaded into that a lot of technical equipment. Police cars are very expensive.
I understand.
So it was
because-
decided, rather than buying a standard fuel car, gas car, or whatever, we would try out what it means to have an electric car, because we might have to convert our entire fleet. So this would be preparing for the future.
Well, it's,
So-
the future isn't here yet.
The replacement
And,
vehicle. So
a Mustang,
that's all that's out there. They make it's not like they're like, but this was a decision, this was last
There's
year.
a lot of state police
so,
cars
yeah.
and Mustangs.
but that
Exactly.
can't, that was an expensive purchase. And we have another expensive purchase coming up with another fire truck. Are we going to get an electric fire truck? Because this is that type of stuff that all of a sudden pulls out of, the garage, and you see them and you say, where did that come from? Who paid for that?
It's been part of the replacement plan for all our vehicles. We have a long-term plan. The fire trucks have a long-term plan. And we, purchased vehicles that meet the needs of the department. And we also were trying to figure out how we're gonna manage an electric vehicle if we have to start buying them. So this is an opportunity to try it out.
Very disappointed when I saw that. I mean, I'm driving a used car, thank you very much, and the police are driving around in a Mustang.
On that same topic,
Your deal, Dan?
Roger Marlowe, Beaver Pond Road. I know that the governor and the legislature wants to go all electric. But I think that they ought to have a vote of the people whether we want to keep gas-powered cars or not. Don't cram it down our throat.
We shouldn't let it happen to the town.
Right.
Got a couple of questions. I'm gonna follow up on this one. Until electric vehicles can be charged with solar panels or windmills, it's a big waste of money. Because you know it can't be done. If you do a whole fleet, it can't be done.
Electric grid won't handle it either.
Well, our electric grid is powered by
Fossil fuel.
nuclear
One at a time, one at a time.
or it's oil.
I want to be able to hear you.
Okay, so to charge the power stations, electric power plants are using coal, oil, or nuclear.
Natural gas.
Okay, or natural gas, right. So the whole concept of electric cars are ridiculous. I would not spend any money on electric cars in this town. It'll be a big waste of money. Technology is not there yet. It's way, maybe 20 years from now. And that's all. And the batteries aren't recyclable, it causes major
I know there's a
environmental.
Mustang being purchased, but right now the electric cars are not the, and I think maybe going to the state might
Well,
make sense.
He's not gonna
a
listen.
lot of the car manufacturers aren't producing them. They're not selling them. Every car Ford sells, it costs them $101,000.
All right, just trying to, I'm gonna let this young lady in front here.
Virginia May is still at 87 Randy Drive. I'm sorry, if everybody knows the answer, we're new to town, we're just trying to catch up. So if, like, for example, I'm looking at the source thing. In 23-24, the approved budget was 28.3, and the estimated budget, how it will end up, right, actual, 29.3. So there is an overspend of that million. Where does it come from? Or do I misunderstand? If the actual differs from approved. Thank you.
I didn't fully understand the,
So we'd have to look at the detail, but I would think there could have been a special appropriation that would have changed the original budget to the
Oh.
adjusted budget.
So approved versus estimated.
Yeah, I'd have to get you the detail.
Okay, so I would give
is
you.
that fiscal 24 or fiscal 20?
Yes, 23-24. I just wanted procedurally. what
So
happens.
sometimes there's a special appropriation
Because of money in
that's
the pension,
done
could
for
have
a one-time expenditure, so that we don't have to increase the base of the budget. What we can do is infuse money from the undesignated fund balance so that the base of the budget doesn't change, but the spending
Is that the
does
reserve, that
increase, yes.
20 million,
Correct.
so
Yes.
that's where it's.
And if you don't do it that way, then it becomes part of the budget.
And we try to avoid building the base, because once it's up, we can't,
It's really
it's
hard to
harder to
go
get down.
All right, a few more. You got another one online?
Yes, I do.
Hello?
Can hear you.
Yes, can the car replacement funds for
Yeah, name and address, please.
the police and fire trucks be revised? This is Beverly at 181 Durham Road.
Beverly, the question was, can a car in?
But the replacement funds that you've mentioned for both the police and the fire trucks, can those figures be reviewed and revised?
They are every year.
We do it every year. So before they're expended, yes.
And sometimes if you look at the CIP, which is our planning document, if you look at it, Sometimes we do push things off if we feel the vehicle is still in good shape. In one fiscal year, we don't want to expend more funds than we have to, so we move it to a different year, and therefore continuing to try to maintain that balance in the CIP expenditures.
And can I just go? So for example, on CIP this year, I think, wasn't there an axle that we bought? And they used, their parts into, so we're not just buying new vehicles. All of our essential services are looking for the most economical way to replace their vehicles. And then we, as the CIP committee, look at that and decide in what year it can be afforded. So not everything is brand new.
To answer your question, Beverly, yes, there can be changes. A few more. Yeah.
Jim Schmaltz, Jonathan's Landing. On the academy budget, there was a meeting, Al was there. I had some questions on it regarding, the process that we're going through. Doesn't seem like it makes sense. So there hasn't been an updated hazmat study on it. There was one done in 2018. There's an evaluation back then, an estimate just for asbestos was over $800,000. Found out at this last meeting and through reading estimates through the FOIA request that they put an allowance of about $500,000 in. So they never told the estimators that there was the abatement needed. And now we're going to start doing bids and design documents, trying to get an estimate again, but we don't have a cost of what the abatement's going to be. And we also don't have a realistic level to give them. They're going to be thinking they're starting at zero and building where things are going to be destroyed during the abatement. The floors have to be torn off, there's a lot of destruction that's going to go on, and they're not doing that. And I don't understand why, as part of that budget, it doesn't happen. It seems like you're, looking at drapes and you haven't dug a foundation. I think, can we speak about like how that, and when it goes over 15.9, how is that going to go into the budget? Is it just going to be in the CIP over the next 10 years? We plug away at it.
Yeah, I understand. I understand.
Well, these are budget, we have to deal with the budget this year, right?
Correct. So there's interest that's in the budget this year. I know that I'm sure there'll be multiple academy meetings. At this point, they cannot go above the 15.9 million.
So what happens if they can't finish it?
15.9. 15.9, yeah.
That's what I said, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Minus 1.2, minus the interest on the temporary loans, minus the finance cost.
Well, you also got the grants, you also have the other bonds that were in there too.
Well, no, the bonds are coming off 15.9, right? So
Correct.
the
So
total
the total will come off. the
spend is 15.9, including interest,
Correct.
expenses, bonds, 1.2 million to date. So you're already like, they're talking, okay, we got to get this done for 15.9, but you don't have 15.9. You have 14.2, 14.8, 14.7. You're at 14.7 already because you already spent that money. And then you're talking about pulling, the vegetation out, but you have lead that we found is in the soil. So you got to abate the lead during that process. You can't just send facility down to pull it out. It just seems like there's a mismanagement there. Let's just get this so far down the road that you can't put the brakes on. Right now, you've got a building we're spending $16 million on, plus $3 million in interest on top of that. Taking the bond money off at the 3.15. So we're about $20 million in, and you're not going to be able to do anything with it because it's going to be empty. There's not going to be anything in it. Al, if I'm wrong, you can tell me, but that's what we're hearing at the meetings. You have 2 stages. Neither one of them could be made ADA compliant and functional. There's a lot of issues there.
And those are all relevant topics to talk to the building committee, and we talked about before that we will be having an opportunity to talk about academy in detail, but this is not what this meeting is about.
Right, I asked for that at the academy meeting. There's nothing been done, so I'm taking advantage of the situation. I'm sorry, but, you know, I think the public needs to know.
We don't have answers.
It's a public information session, so. Okay, there's
So
public.
I think that the concern, if I'm hearing it correctly, is if we don't have the money to do academy the way the people voted for it, where is the rest of the money going to come from? So maybe it's not in this budget year, but is that going to be money that we are going to have to now keep contributing and keep pouring into this? I've heard things like, well, the septic system needs to be all redone, and if the septic system needs to be redone, the playground and everything has to be torn up. Are those things that you're gonna come back to us and say, we need more money, or else there's gonna be a shell of a building sitting there that nobody can use? That's all of our concern, that we're gonna be tapped into for more and more money to finish this thing. So understand that, that's all part of the budgeting, that's all part of what we're voting for. If we're angry about that, we're gonna vote down this budget. So this is all part of the issues that we have here, that this project is going to be draining us of more and more money. And that's why it's relevant to this discussion.
We're running down on Monday.
Andy Valambrosa, Horse Pond Road. Bruce brought up a good point at the academy meeting. Do we have a total yet of what it's gonna cost to finish it? Academy?
It's coming up.
There's gonna be a meeting about it soon, we don't have that number, the board has
2
not
weeks, I think.
gotten any final
think they said a month.
recommendations from the academy.
Okay.
Will that be public?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
public meeting.
All
Every
meetings
meetings
are
are public.
public.
Well,
And
no,
when-
in person.
Spend more money.
And
In
when
person
did,
and hybrid.
when did
They're
the
all both.
accountants or engineers or the building committee notify the board that they couldn't build it for that money? When was that disclosed to you guys?
That was at every meeting.
So, I understand about academy, you brought up a point. I mean, in this budget, I talked about the interest that's in the budget, right? In the next year, it may be something else, but that'll be in next year's budget. One second.
The point I'm trying to make is the architects, the engineers, the building committee, when were you notified that they couldn't build that building or remodel that building? This is only a remodel, okay? A rehab. When did they notify the board of selectmen that they could not build it for that money? Because this way here, you wouldn't have spent $1.3 million in the design phase if they said, hey, we can't build it for that, it's impossible. An architect should have known that.
I think that this is not the purpose of the meeting, we should.
Well, it's appropriate because it's gonna cost us money later.
I get it.
It's all money.
For us.
No, you know what I'm saying, is you would have saved $1.3 million if they said, Peggy, Scott, Bruce, you can't build it for 15.9 million. It can't be done.
Right, but you heard at the last, whatever it was, the last academy meeting,
Yeah.
that they're in the process of working up an estimate. And that's probably gonna come back to us in 2 weeks, and that'll be a publicly noticed.
That
and
should
you'll
have been
an
done,
opportunity to talk about it.
that should have been done
Months ago.
when you went to them.
But it wasn't.
With the whole
But it
design.
wasn't. So
But that guy should have told you, you can't be built for that money, let's not waste the taxpayers' money. That's the only point I'm trying to make. I've been doing this stuff for years.
Thanks for your point.
Thanks, Andy, I do understand.
I'm just trying to save people money. That's all.
Anybody from the public would like to speak?
When you go pay $6 a pound for hamburger now, I mean, it's, you know. Gotta save what we can.
Anybody from the public would like to speak? Second time, Mike, anybody out there?
I got two.
Go. There, Mike?
She's here, she's unmuted.
Tell her she's done.
Yes.
Nothing.
Anybody?
Hello again, Terry and Bartlett Drive. Another question I have is regarding the healthcare increases. What percentage of the healthcare premiums that the town and Department of Education staff must pay in premiums, how does that compare to the average of the private sector? Does it equal the same percentage increase that the employees in the private sector are being asked to pay, or is it less? And why? And with all of the comments and questions that you've heard tonight with regards to Academy, I really truly hope that the leadership in this town doesn't dig its heels in and follow the comment or the adage that one man expressed at the last Academy meeting, which is, if you build it, the public will have to pay for it. Again, remember that whatever you've heard tonight, you may choose to look the other way, but you can never again say that you did not know. And I look forward to all of the responses from all of the questions that the public has given tonight. And I thank you for all of your service, indeed.
Thank you, Terry. Anybody else in the public would like to speak? For the second time?
One closing comment, Roger Marlowe, 21 Beaver Pond. After you've all listened to us tonight, what is your general undertaking of what you understand we're trying to relay to you?
I think everybody here was listening. We understand there's frustration. We understand there's some issues with Academy. We understand the reevaluation process could be better. And we also understand that I think everybody would like to have a little more relief.
Can the other people answer that too?
This is a board of finance.
I know, but everybody's an individual here, so.
Everybody's individuals.
I would agree with what John said, that's what I heard.
I'm gonna see if there's any more public comment, then I'll allow them to answer. Okay, fair enough. Anybody else in the public would like to speak? Second time. Third time, there being none, the public information session is closed. I want them to answer. I also wanna, Terry had a couple of questions. Peg, if you want to answer, positions not filled, the new officer.
So in the budget, public hearing presentation for the board of
I
selectmen,
think there's some confusion on the back and forth. I don't want to turn this into everybody. I want
So,
people listening. and
there is a
answering.
slide that talks about the additions and deletions from the staffing, so that is available on the presentation that's on the budget section of the website for February 27, 2024.
Healthcare. I mean, the percentage of OT is in the police department, in the budget there. And then she mentioned something about healthcare compared to what the private sector pays. I mean, you know, guess what the private sector pays, you can relay that.
I would just make a comment that our peer group analysis is other municipalities, because that's who we're competing with for our workforce. So that is typically how we do, although many of us as volunteers and now all worked in the public-private sector and understand there is a differential between the two, but there's also a differential in pay, so.
So I'm gonna, Stacy and Kristen and the Board of Finance and Board of Selectmen, Board of Education, I want to thank you for being here. We're gonna take a 5 to 10 minute break and then we'll have our Board of Finance meeting. But I want to thank all the public for being here also. We do appreciate your comments and Mike, thank you too. I don't want to forget your transport. Thank you, everyone. Board of Finance meeting is now in session. I'm sorry, Mike, you good? So it is. Okay, Mike, 8:38 p.m. I know this meeting was supposed to start at 7:30. I apologize to the public. Thursday, April 18th, the Board of Finance meeting is now in session. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Need a motion to approve the minutes of March 18, 2024. You gotta leave that open for a public meeting. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, my apologies.
That's okay. I appreciate that because you want to keep it quiet.
You can kind of shut it a little bit though.
Yeah, leave it cracked.
Thank you, Matt. Second. Yes, thanks. Thank you. Any amendments or corrections? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, abstentions? That motion carries. Considering the public hearing, the chair's comment, thank you everyone for attending from the public and for our Board of Finance and our finance team, and the Board of Selectmen, Board of Ed. So thank you. So I kept them very short. Finance, you get the member comments. Matt?
Yes, getting through our first, for some of us, our first public hearing was good. But I think we should probably take some time also to address the proposition that Bruce brought up about reduction in the special board of tri-board meeting and then during the public hearing.
Okay. Any other finance member comments?
I just want to thank everybody that came to the public hearing. I think it's always helpful. We don't often get members of the public at our meetings or feedback, so I always find it very beneficial. So I appreciate the comments and questions.
I'll always say and remind the public that none of this will go overnight. And there are meetings and there are votes and there are things that the community can do to have their voices heard prior to the final votes, prior to having to pay for things that were voted on by the town. And I encourage people to continue to come out, but I encourage them to come out sooner. I encourage them to look at the budget sooner and to be part of the discussions throughout the fiscal year with the Board of Selectmen, who are the planning mechanism of the town. And that may help in terms of being able to have more timing that they can have their voices heard and articulated and questions answered.
Thank you, Jamie. Finance committee member comments.
I guess I'd just like to echo some of the sentiments. I was really pleased to see so many people show up tonight to express their thoughts. It was very important for us to hear those thoughts being expressed. And I hope that indicates that there will be more participation in the future.
Thank you, Judy.
I just wanted to say that, you know, transparency is always key. And I think that it's very important for people to have the opportunity to be able to have their opinion, have their voice heard. And I think that it's also important for us to realize that people are also entitled to have different opinions. And it's always good to hear everything from everyone.
Any other finance committee member comments? Our first selectman's here. Peggy, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, well, thank you to the public for providing their input. This process did start quite a while ago. We have heard from people. We've made a lot of efforts, I think, to address some of those concerns, but there's going to be ongoing conversations about all the things that the public is concerned about with expenses and projects in town. I encourage you to attend the Board of Selectmen meeting because pretty much everything that gets into the budget from a project basis is voted on, discussed at Board of Selectmen meetings and oftentimes Board of Finance meetings as well. So there is a lot of discussion on these decisions that goes over time. And, you know, I think sometimes we can't answer questions off the cuff because we know if we say something and it ends up we're calling something incorrectly, we are also beholden to that. So you know, I encourage people to email, and we always try my office or to the finance department, and we do try to respond as quickly as we can with detailed answers to questions. It's just not something that we can oftentimes address right away. And so that's why sometimes we can't be as responsive as we want in these meetings. And I also just want to thank the staff for all the hard work that goes into the budgeting process as well, because this does start for town staff really in, you know, October. Well, July 1, actually, the new fiscal year, we start working on our capital plan, July 1 for the new fiscal year, and then we start working on the budget in October and November. So it is an ongoing process. So those are my comments.
Thank you. Any questions for the first selectman? We have citizens' comments. Anybody from the public who'd like to speak?
Can I talk from the public?
Sure, Bruce.
Bruce, Dairy Hill Road. I just like to echo Jean's comments that there is a cadence to how we plan and discuss and vote on these important decisions. The cadence is decades old, and the time to get involved is is in the beginning of those discussions, on the eve of setting the budget, it becomes difficult to do. And so I appreciate the patience you guys all showed in hearing everybody's voice tonight, and would just echo, if you are concerned as a citizen, as we all are, please get involved in the early parts of the conversation and stay involved all throughout.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson, for your input. Anybody else from the public who would like to speak? Mike, anybody,
Nobody.
second time? Third time, there being none, public information session is closed. New business, discuss and take action to approve the fiscal 25 Madison budget. Okay. I know we're gonna just make the motion to approve the Madison budget. In its recommended budget of $33,974,100 for the town of Madison budget. Okay, motion made. Is that yours, Katie?
Sure.
Second. Second, June, discussion. Go ahead, Matt.
During previous meeting, Bruce brought up a point about having us consider the reduction of the $10,000 extra for that last month and next year for hiring. I believe it's a fourth police officer. I know we had spoken quite a bit in the past about, I think it was a response. My perception was a response to the community's want for that. But again, Bruce had brought it up, so maybe we should come back.
Sorry.
I think that's we've had many conversations about this. I thought, there were a lot of things in place, that made it make sense. First and foremost, the safety and security, of the town, also planning ahead. I think we also all agreed, after hearing some feedback from the police department that, until the positions were filled, that money would not be extended. So to me, it makes fiscal planning sense to have the money there, so that we can meet the need, that we know is coming down the pipe.
Anybody else from the Board of Finance?
Yeah, so I think, Matt, you had said the need of the town, the want of the town. I believe it's a need of the town. I understand that Bruce's point that you don't have it earmarked, and you don't, but financially, we're the fiduciaries of the town, and it's our responsibility to make sure that we have the money we need, so we don't have to go back to the public, so we don't have a situation where we don't have the safety precautions in town based on the crime rate that we're having, based on people's uncomfortableness of living. And we know moving down the line with the changes coming to the town, and they've been articulated clearly from the police commission that there are changes coming to the town. They know in the future we're going to need this. And I believe it's in our best interest in the fiscal arm of the town and in planning that we add this money in based on the conditions that if they don't feel what exists right now, then they will not have access to that money. But I believe it's our fiduciary responsibility to do what we believe is appropriate for the planning, for the financial planning of the town. And that's where I believe they've made a strong argument that if not at the end of this year, then the next fiscal year, they're gonna need this, and it puts us in a better position to have that 10 grand put aside and earmarked for this.
John, I'd say that.
Yeah, I just had a question on procedure because I wasn't sure. I've heard we can only reduce the budget, but in this case, we did increase it. I don't see a restriction on that, but I just wanted to clarify procedurally.
We can only reduce it if the budget fails.
You
So I
have to
think that
reduce
was
it. You can't
not,
increase it.
we can't increase it. That's
If
where
the
I
budget
think
fails,
that's.
you cannot increase it.
Right, and I think that's what you're hearing. In terms of during the budget process, this is the only time the Board of Finance can, on our own, infuse money into the budget that we believe, based on the fiscal planning for the town, that we are going to, it's the same thing we do with the CIP. If we believe capital is short, it has nothing to do with planning, it has to do with our financial piece of it, and we have to protect the town from any shortfalls further down the line. And that's why we can add and we can reduce within this time period, except with the exception, if the budget goes down, then we can only reduce.
Anybody, and Katie go unless someone else would like to say, I'm gonna say go.
And we did it last year, if you remember, with the pension.
Well, to defend John.
Right, well, but he was very involved.
Yeah.
He remembers the pension because it was right after film. But anyway, it is, there's precedent for it, and it does say in the, charter that it can be added or reduced.
So, anybody else? So, go ahead.
Just one more thing, so if we did decide tonight to keep it as is for 10,000. So next year, would we be cognizant of that we
Yes.
inflated and then so we'd have to reduce?
We didn't inflate,
I'm sorry, yeah, I used the wrong words. And we infused,
we infused.
yes.
And yes, we would be very cognizant of that fact, and then it would be reduced in the next budget. If they have used the 10, then we've already set that standard. So we have less of a jump in the budget the following year.
And I did speak with the chief. I know the board of selectmen, everybody else did. They believe at some point there will be needs. Been very clear. None of this happens in any way unless those other positions are filled. That's one. Two, obviously, I think, G made the case. It was a strong argument. Strong argument been made to everybody because the board of selectmen passed a resolution. Hey, next year we're probably going to need this, or we support it. What we're doing is put it in contingency. It doesn't mean it's not in the chief's budget. So, with all due respect, you can't just go spend it. It has to come back before us. So I think for all those reasons, it makes sense. If they don't need it, we're all cognizant of the fact that we can pull it back. Any other discussion on the motion is to approve the budget, the town budget of $33,974,100. It's been motion and second. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstention, that motion carries unanimously. Any discussion, take action to approve the Board of Education fiscal 25 budget. That number is approve the Board of Education budget at $63,645,156. I need that in the form of a motion, please.
So moved.
Motion made by Katie. Can I get a second? Seconded by Jude. Discussion. Katie? I think you have your hand up.
No, I wasn't.
Any discussion?
I guess I will, since she said my name.
When are you gonna learn?
I thought she had it.
Open the door, Sean. So, I know this was difficult, for all of us, and for, the Board of Ed, and, having sat in that seat, both as a board member and as chair, I know how difficult it is, and I know, that your budgets, are well designed and well thought out, and I know this is going to be hard, and there will be some hard decisions, to be made. And I guess want you to know that it wasn't easy.
Comments. I'm gonna actually echo something with Mr. Wilson said. We're selecting this process has been going on for a while. Glad to see the public. The more involved you are, the better it is for all of us. It makes a big difference. Coming in at the 11th hour, hearing your input makes a difference. This is something we've been working on for months, and the Board of Selectmen, Board of Education, months prior to that. Any other discussion or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the Board of Education budget at $63,645,156, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstention? That motion carries. We have item 9, discuss and take action to approve the following special appropriations from the unassigned fund balance that were approved by the Board of Selectmen on the March 25th, 24 meeting. Item A is $100K to the capital and non-recurring expense fund to establish a project line item in this fund for small equipment purchases for the same amount. And we'll take a little time in the motion second on it. Well, thank you, Matt. Second, somebody, Bob, discussion. This is something we've discussed before, the small equipment. This is not something that we wanted to borrow money for. This is what we want to capital non-recurring. Good.
So discussion. I think that this is a great plan. It makes things clearer. It makes things more expenditures well-defined for transparency. So I think it's a great idea.
Comments? Any other further comments or discussion?
Yes.
Go ahead. I didn't call her name.
You did, that time it's on her.
But, no, I agree with what Matt said. I you know, hopefully this will reduce some of the special appropriations, and will help, but I also know that based on what we've talked about before, that this might not be enough and we may need to infuse more, so that's correct.
Fair enough.
And I just want to say one other thing. This is a perfect example of where we fiscally plan for years out. And we look for ways to try to keep the budget numbers to the best of our ability, predictable for the public. And this is how we do it with these, I'm using the wrong word, but these little savings accounts that we put money into so that in our fiscal planning for the next 5-10 years, we have money set aside for these things.
Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the 100K to the capital non-recurring establishment budget line item for small equipment purchases, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstention, that motion carries. Okay, we have 100K to assign the fund balance for the future budget impact of the fireman's pension. Give that form of a motion, please. Motion made by Katie, can I get a second? Thank you, Bob. For the fireman's pension, you know, we do more money to this. You know, it's, you know, they're volunteers. I know their retirement pension went up. I think we're infusing more money into it. Is there any other comments or questions on it?
I think this is another example of if we infuse the money now, we don't have to do it later. We already are building up a reserve to cover and keep the town from falling short on our fiscal responsibilities. And this protects us from any kind of liability with the fireman's pension.
John?
How did we get to the $100,000 and do we think that's gonna be enough or?
I think you could always put more, John. I want to say start with that, but it was $1 million. What did we put last year?
So
$1.2 million?
this 100,000 is actually something that we're going to assign fund balance for 3 years to offset the budget impact. So it's not like we're taking the 100,000 and infusing it into the trust. We are assigning part of the fund balance to offset the budget impact of the fire pension over the next 3 years. And out of this 145,000 help this upcoming budget, and then the next 2 years will be used as
So
well.
to smooth out the arc over the next year.
Exactly.
Matt?
Yeah, so more of an educational point, since I'm a junior on this, is this what Fillmore McPherson was advocating for? Okay,
Yes.
okay.
So Phil, so we actually, in that point, we infused money right into the pension.
That was different, yes.
But it's.
It also
the
helped
same
in this
principle.
regard, too.
It's the same principle of why he wanted it in the
Right.
pension.
His goal was to mitigate any
Yeah.
bump in the future
Correct.
budget.
So, yeah, to answer your question here.
Okay.
Or exposure, financial liability for the town.
Still gotta bring Fillmore's name up every meeting.
I think he's still watching.
I think he's watching.
He's probably.
Yes.
Any other discussion on the 100K to the firemen's, to the fund balance for the future budget impact of the firemen's pension? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. So we have 225,000 to the coastal resiliency fund for fiscal 24 and fiscal 25 per recommendation of the capital improvement program committee. Take that in the form of a motion, please.
Could you read it again?
I'd like to have 225,000 to coastal resiliency fund for fiscal 2025 per recommendation of the CIP program committee. Take that in the form of a motion, please.
So moved.
Bob, Matt, second that discussion. Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstentions? That motion carried. We have item 10, discuss and take action to approve a request from the police department to move 60,000 in the communications fund from fiscal 25 to fiscal 24 for a needs assessment study for communication towers that was approved by the Board of Selectmen on the March 25th meeting 2024. With that in the form of a motion, please. Motion made by Matt. Can I get a second? Second by Katie. Discussion. I know the chief's here. If you have any comments, discussion. Katie?
Obviously. So I know that this has been in CIP for quite some time, and it continued to kind of get pushed out because of the lease agreement on one of the towers, and I'm misremembering, I have my binder here. But it continued to get pushed until we had a study like what's being proposed here, which is great that it's happening. My question is it coming from the CIP Communications Fund? Okay, so that money's already there.
Yes, that was in year one.
Long way.
Coming up for next year's budget, we're looking to move it up now so that we can start the process.
Thank you. That's another reason.
Any other questions or comments? You want to say?
Can I say one thing?
Sure, Gene, you can say.
Jack, I'm gonna go first. Because I know once you go, I could be here till 9:30.
No, you're not.
Sassy. No, but I think this is another, in the meeting prior to this, somebody had said about if it's in the CIP, if it's in the budget, does it stay? And this is an example of how planning gives us the ability to move money around in different years to have less of an impact in one fiscal year. And we knew this was coming. It was saved for because it was coming, and we are moving it up a year, but we have the funds to move it up a year. And I think this is where what this board does is illustrated in this point that we kind of tried to bring out in the meeting prior to this. So if that helps people. All right,
Thank you, Gene.
now go.
Hold on, Gene. No other.
Oh, I'm not allowed to tell you to go.
Now go. No, I'm just kidding. Anybody else on the board want to say? Go ahead, Chief.
We have been working on the tower project, looking at the needs assessment in the town. Hats off to Sanderbur and to Peggy for the work that's been put in on this. We've talked to some of the vendors, which would be the cell companies. We've talked to some of the tower builders, people at the existing tower, one proposed tower. Gets pretty confusing. We then talked to our own vendors to do some studies. So after probably our final discussion, and I think and Peggy brought it up, we should consider having needs assessment, an analysis of what we really need, and not only add to it communications for all things emergency services, but we do have a rather large gap of cell coverage, particularly along Route 1 and along the beaches. So that's part of the conversation we have with some of these companies, and they were very one that would put a tower, or they would like to, but I'm not saying they're going to run up there and start proliferating towers. But the point being is, I think we should look at this, pressure twice, cut once, find out what we're looking at, because I know what the towers cost us last time, project we did 9 years ago. It's a lot of money. So I think $60,000 for a consultant to come in and say, ABC, this is what you need, this is what you don't need, what the options are.
And I would just echo, this will include the entire town, and there's a lot of issues in North Madison as well.
Yes.
And I will highlight that out of the strategic plan, one of the objectives that the community expressed quite a bit was a frustration with, poor service areas. So that's why we're not just focusing on emergency services, we're gonna broaden it and look at overall coverage gaps and problems and see how we can solve that.
Interestingly enough, Fairfield County, 2 towns down there, town up north of Windsor Locks, that group there, they did the same thing. They also looked at cell coverage, had a participation from the vendors.
Any questions for the chief? No, we have.
I do have a question.
I'm sorry, Matt. I
This is-
thought your hand was just hanging.
Oh,
up.
no, I'm just looking around. But Chief, does this also include the beach? Because I know I've heard lots of complaints that we don't get good cell reception at the beach, and it could be from emergency service standpoint. Absolutely. The beach up north, Dorset Lane, up by Rockland Reserve, we could pick the places. Okay, gotcha. Out towards Killingworth, over there. So we just want to spend our money wisely, and just want to look at it and see what are our options. Because our timeline is not going to work with some of the vendors.
Thanks, chief. Any other questions or comments for the chief? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second to approve the request from the PD from the 60,000 communications fund. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Abstention, that motion carries. Item 11, going to table. Item 12, discuss and take action to.
Oh, wait, when you go back to 11?
I just tabled it.
Why?
Tabled it for more information.
We don't have enough information.
I don't have enough information either way to act on it. So it's
It's gonna
tabled
be
for
on
another
the
meeting.
future meeting agenda for the board of selectmen.
We don't want to approve it until we have our
Right.
answer, our questions.
I just have, is this an interdepartmental project and present it to the Board of Finance and select people? Is what, in other words, I'm naive, forgive me. Which department is responsible for this project?
So I'm gonna answer your question and.
Thank you, I'm so
Yes,
sorry
and
if I'm
it's- it's
interrupting
okay.
or
And I want to say it this way, and I'm hoping no one's offended, but there's a public information session in the beginning and there's one at the end, so normally I wouldn't allow this in between.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's okay, I'm just trying to give information, so, basically for, as a Board of Finance members and team, we approve the funding, we not approve the funding. That's how it works. We don't have enough information right now to make a decision. I believe the Board of Selectmen tabled it also. So on that side, if they go through and they approve it, then it'll be our job to approve the funding or not.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So it's tabled. Discuss and take action to approve routine line item transfer for fiscal 24. Normally this is in departments, states that are, they're just moving within departments. So discuss and take action to approve routine line item transfer for fiscal 24 with a total $60,000. Motion made by Matt. Thank you, Matt. I need a second. Second by Bob. Discussion or still within the department?
All within the department, you have the backup, there's two, one for facilities and one for public works. So the actual line item transfer is less in your packet.
Thank you.
And it
We knew
goes to
that.
what account? If you look in
It's
your
within the
packet, the
department.
facilities, I think we're moving some gas money to building maintenance and public works, we're moving some snow money to actual fuel for
So
vehicles.
we can't limit to the $60,000 for the police department.
No, it's within their department, as John said.
Correct.
That would have been so seamless.
Any other comments on the routine line item transfers? Seeing that we have a motion to second, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstention, that motion carries. So we have a discuss and approve a special appropriation of $100,000 for municipal match for pedestrian improvement, Concord Meadows Route 1 sidewalk project. Grant pending Board of Selectmen approval, so I need a motion. Made by Katie, can I get a second, please? Second by Jude, discussion. Katie, Matt.
I did.
Katie's gonna go first.
So I guess my question, just again, hearing from the public this evening about matching grants, or municipal matches, I assume what that means. Are there any stipulations to that grant?
So I think John Inaco is being promoted.
Yeah, he's promoted, he is in,
We could
he's
talk
just
about,
muted.
we could talk about the project and.
Yeah, basically want to know about the match
Hi,
too,
John.
Stace. Go ahead, John. You hear the question?
So yes, so the 100,000, there were two grants. One was is a $400,000 grant. And there was no muni match required for that grant. The other grant, I think it was 207,000. I'm rounding. For that, there was a $100,000 municipal match required in order to get that grant. And so the total sum of all of the grant money plus 100,000 will allow us to do the project. And I think this has been, the 100,000 I think has been carried in CIP. Or approved in CIP.
Is there any stipulations to the grant?
No, I'm sorry, yeah, no, it's just a requirement of the, in order for us to have gotten that grant, we needed to provide a match.
Okay.
And we've already accepted the grants, right, John? Both grants?
Yes.
Back.
Yeah.
Both boards have already accepted the grants, knowing that there would be a match.
Just a question for this board, we all heard, just if there was any stipulation, I know there are none, so I think we're, anybody?
And it's coming from CIP,
Said.
not the general fund, yeah.
No, this would be, this would
This is
come out of
special
the
appropriation.
special, it's a
The general.
special appropriation out of fund balance, general fund.
Misunderstood.
Yeah, I think we said the project was in CIP.
It was in CIP, but the matching piece, it's always been on your fund balance. It's been on the bottom there, so we were expecting that it would come out of there.
Any other questions or comments for John?
Did I hear correctly that the total cost will be the amount of the two grants plus the 100,000?
That's what I heard.
Yeah.
Yes, and actually we received, we're vetting the bids right now, but it looks like we're gonna be under a little bit, so.
So the total cost of the project
We
be around.
like under, we like under.
I like that link.
Any other comments or questions for John or in general? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Say aye.
Thank you,
Thanks,
John.
John.
It's time.
Motion carries. John, thank you.
Thank you.
So we have discussed and take action, possible action, to verbiage for changes to the tax deferment resolutions.
So moved.
Second. Yeah, I don't know if we need. Dustin, some changes we're looking to do.
It's a minor change. It falls in line with the change that we made in the other two senior tax ordinances. We had, if you recall, the deferral, no, I'm sorry, the freeze in the local abatement. We made some changes. We went through the whole process. This this resolution refers back to that ordinance. So we had to just update it. And then we changed the term, you could see in your documentation, to include the income limit for both spouses. So that term was changed in.
So just like passing this, that.
We're just cleaning things up, so everything.
There you go. There you go.
Prior to that.
Any other discussion or comments on it? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, that's the motion carries. Review of the financial. Katie, she's gonna be going on.
I really went over this.
Good.
So question, Stacy, on the facilities, Bill McMinn, sheet that we got, where it says fiscal year transfer aggregate over 20,000, what does that mean? He's the only one that said yes, so
The new charter does not require line item transfers under $20,000 to come to the board's approval anymore.
okay.
This was over.
This is superfluous.
Within their own department, correct. If it's under 20,000, we
Even
no
in the
longer
fourth-
have to come to the boards, but this brought him over the 20.
Thank you. That was new to me. And then, in all these things, the total within budget lines in the notes means,
I don't know what you're looking at.
I'm looking at the, operating budget that was in our packet.
Does the org
In the
say like
comment.
TF?
No, the, one of them says LITSA needed, which I assume is
The line item
another
for special, yep.
special appropriation. And then, but there's a bunch that, and I don't know.
And it says within budget.
Total within budget.
Yep. Is it this?
Yeah.
But then it looks like it goes over if you follow it.
This,
Yeah.
okay, you're in facilities, town facilities. So Billy has a lot of lines in there. For example, all the utilities, the building repairs and maintenance. The object is the same, so technically we don't have to have all those lines. It just helps Billy keep track, or facilities department keep track of where the repairs or the utilities are being paid.
Okay.
So we look at the object in total,
Thank you.
and that's why if it says in total, within the object, then we're good with it.
For explaining that. to
And
me.
that department is the only department really that we look at that.
Thank you. Any other questions on the financial? Seeing none. Any other citizens' comments? Anybody from the public would like to speak? Mike, anybody there? Second
Nobody.
time from the public, third and final time, public information session is closed. Motion to adjourn,
So moved.
second. Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned at 9:13. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. So what did
Stacy, Chris.
Thank you for all.
Any answers for some of these?
I mean,